Hello everyone. Before we get into this episode, it's important for you to remember to be empathetic and understanding for every single guest that I have on this show. If you enjoy this content, please make sure to subscribe and follow because I do release weekly videos every single week. Otherwise, enjoy the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and I am ecstatic to introduce my next guest. He is a player gone coach in Overwatch who used to play for teams such as Minds of Esports, Movie Star Rioters, Team Sweden, and then Misfits, which was rebranded into the Florida Mayhem. Since then, he has taken a more involved role teaching players how to really dive into the GOATS meta, coaching Eternal Academy, but previously before that, he was working with Team Giganti. Please let me introduce Johan Klingestedt, maybe better known as CwoosH. Welcome to the show.
Hey Blake, thanks for having me, man. Dive into the GOATS meta. I do wish it was dive, but you know, it's a clever use of words there.
I thought it would be quite appropriate considering how much everyone really wishes that they could be watching dive right now. I don't know if you'd want to be coaching dive, considering how good Europe teams tend to be with the GOATS comparative to other teams. But I mean that's something that we can get into. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. I think we're going to talk about a lot of cool things. You are from a very cool country, and I really kind of want to delve into that, but we're going to start it off really easy. I always like to start off the shows with a fairly simple question, and maybe this won't actually be a simple question, but we'll see. So one of the things I want to start off with is you actually have a sleeve tattoo on your left arm. So most people don't normally get tattoos for no reason, but maybe you did. Is there any sort of significance from it, and what actually is it? Because I've never actually got a really good look at it.
It's a Japanese serpentine dragon. Growing up, I really liked the Japanese culture, like samurai movies. I would watch so many samurai movies growing up. Also, I'm a bit of, I don't watch as much series anymore because I don't have that much time. But I used to watch a lot of anime. I'm kind of a weeb, so to speak, a little bit. I'm a casual weeb, I'd say, at this point. But I've always liked the Asian theme, the Japanese theme. It doesn't have a big meaning to me necessarily. It's more like that I like the style, I like the culture, and I like the country of Japan, or Japan. That's not how you say it.
Japan.
But I like it in general. And a lot of my friends got tattooed when they were 18 or even younger than that, and I've always wanted a tattoo. But I actually got this one when I was 20, and I really thought of what I wanted to have. And some might think you went with color and all of that. That's you went ham, which I can see that perspective as well. But this is something that I really wanted, and I'm still kind of working on it. I haven't had the time to finish it up. There's still one spot behind the arm here that isn't finished.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can. Yeah. So this is then,
it goes really long too. It's a full sleeve.
It's supposed to be over in the back here as well, where I want some what's it called? Pagoda houses, I think in English. But yeah, so it's a kind of a passion project for me. I started small with the flower down here, and then I kind of just build it up. But yeah, so
cool thing.
It's a very painful process, but
is it really painful?
It is. Oh wow! It's like you wouldn't think this.
I've heard that it's not that bad.
On the elbow, here where you're supposed to, people say you have no feeling here.
Yeah.
But that's actually the worst spot.
You cut off you were talking about the elbow, how it is the most painful spot to get your tattoo.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. I think it's because of the bone is there, but you necessarily have no feeling when you kind of pinch yourself there. But it definitely hurts when you're getting a tattoo there. So yeah, that's the worst spot for me. That's for sure.
Okay, so kind of cool thing, and I don't know if you knew this, but I was actually born in Japan. I am not Japanese at all, but I was actually born in Okinawa because my parents were military, which Okinawa is weirdly not actually part of. It's very the politics of Okinawa compared to Japan is very kind of touchy, I've heard, but at the time it was called when I was born there Okinawa, Japan, because they were kind of taken over by Japan. So kind of a cool thing. So when you were looking at it, and you had to choose designs, what did you kind of go for to pick your designs?
So I have a really good friend of mine who is good at drawing. Has always been good at drawing. Um, and he's been drawing his entire life pretty much. Like growing up, he would always be drawing in class, when there was math or something. So he has always been really talented at drawing. And as I mentioned, I've always been wanting to have a tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never found, like, I did the usual thing, I did the Google, looked at Google, kind of got some inspiration from there, and then I talked with him, and if, I gave him, like, the theme I wanted and what I wanted on it, and if he could draw something for me. And then, it was like an iteration process, and he and me, it took, like, since he's working busy, it took quite some time, like a month or something. I would go to him like maybe once per week or something. He would send me pictures and what do you think of this?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, after a while, I was really really happy with what he drawn for me. So after a while, that's what we went with. So it was a cooperation between me and a friend of mine.
I won't lie. Like, if I was your friend, I think I would have probably found that to be one of the most like bonding things you could ever do. Like, having your own art on someone else's body.
Yeah, for sure.
It's gotta be like an extreme thing for something. So let's kind of, like you mentioned your friend. He's been your friend for a long time. So let's kind of dig into that a little bit. Like your life as CwoosH, the person growing up. You're obviously born in Sweden, and you come from a town called Fagersta.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but
not quite. It's Fagersta.
Fagersta.
Almost.
Okay. So what was growing up like for you? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Let's start there. That's very easy.
I do. I have two big sisters and one big brother. I'm the youngest in the family. My biggest sister, she's actually 45. She's quite old. I'm only 25. But yeah, I have my big brother. He's 5 years older than me, and then my other sister is 4 years older than me. But yeah, we grew up in outside of the town I'm living, and the town I'm living in is quite small. It's only about 12,000 people who live here. So it's it's a community. Most people know each other and all of that. But yeah, I grew up outside of this town where my parents live. And it's by a lake. It's in the nature. It's very very beautiful, very serene. And I went there over Easter, and it's very very nice. So yeah, I grew up there with my sisters and my family. My mom and dad has always stayed together, so it was a good upbringing, I'd say. But when I was growing up, my brother was the one who got the computer first. So I would just watch him all the time, playing video games. He would play the first Half-Life, and I was enthralled by that game. He would play Warcraft 3, which I thought was amazing. So I would just spend most of my youth. Obviously, I would play outside. I did, the sports thing. I played football. I played bandy. I played a lot of different sports. But my main passion has always kind of been video games. So I would sit behind him and watch him play these games, and he would get his buddies together and throw LAN parties and all of that. And yeah, eventually I got my own computer, and the first game I played on my own computer was actually World of Warcraft. Yeah, I know. But I played the good World of Warcraft, the original, the classic, the vanilla. So yeah, I played that, and in school was really good. I think I wouldn't say I was the most motivated student, but when I found something fun, then I really put my mind to it, and that's me in general, I think. So when it came to like math and English, which I really enjoy, I did well in those, but I'm also like I did what I had to do in school, I guess you could say.
So you did like the bare minimum a lot of times for like a lot of things.
But pretty much. But then after I graduated school, I kind of realized my mistakes. So I actually went and studied up all my grades to get good grades, because my thought back then when I graduated high school, I guess, is I wanted to go to a university. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into economics or marketing, either of those two. I was trying to decide between which one I wanted to do. But then, how old was I? I think I was around 21, 22. And then a game came out called Overwatch that
Yeah.
that's a story in itself.
Yeah, we're gonna break this up into some parts. Otherwise, it's gonna get a little
confusing.
No, we're getting a little bit because there's like 3 main segments of like early life, your Overwatch life, and then obviously your coaching life that we'll probably end up covering through here. So let's take it back a little bit here. So looking at like school and growing up. First of all, a question I always ask my guests, and mostly like it sounds awkward to ask this sometimes, but it's just because I've seen it play like a different effect on different people's lives. Your parents, are they together or are they separated?
They are together. They're still together. Yeah, they've always been together.
Okay, so that is something that is I don't know if you know, like you must feel very blessed about that, especially if you look at like society in general. Most people's parents don't say. Mine have divorced both. They divorced and they got remarried and divorced again. So I am on like a triple divorce record here for a child. But you must find that something very special. Is that something that you kind of look up to, like as a goal in your own life?
That's a very good question. Yeah, for sure. I think, as you said, it's been lucky, I guess, or blessed, as you said. Yeah. I think it's been really good, and for sure, I think I've really, I've been amazed on how they can stay happy together for so long, and always, find. I think they got a really good idea on how to, keep themselves happy and make sure that everything is good, and that's they always do stuff together, new stuff, whatever it is. They might go just road trip down to some town they've never been in, stuff like that, which I think is very, very important, that I've pretty much taken to heart. I think that if you want to have something long lasting, if you want to take care of something, you have to always think about that something and do stuff around that something to keep it as good as possible, I guess. Yeah, but yeah, for sure.
That kind of brings me into another question, and we're gonna hop around just a little bit here with this next question. You mentioned like always making sure to work on that relationship, and this is kind of something that comes up with esports, and really it's kind of computer culture in itself because of the way that we're so remote now, and like our ease of access to individuals. Do you feel like that is something that is going to get harder and harder to maintain just because of the way that people live their lives nowadays? And do you think it's possible to have something like that still?
That's a very, very hard question for sure. I think to me it's like it depends what you want as a person, right? For sure, I think with the ease of access, Twitter, all the social media and all of that, it plays a big part in everyone's life nowadays. I'd say, everyone under 30, maybe some people above 30 as well. But it's, people sit with their phones all the time, and they always look at Facebook. They always look at whatever it is. They're always connected to something. And, I think, yeah, as I said, if you're a person that really wants, a family life or a happy relationship or whatever it is, I think sometimes you have to realize when it's time to put down your phone or just pay attention to whoever you're with. Actually, a funny thing is that sometimes when I hang out with my family or even my friends, we have this rule where when we eat or when we're talking or we hang out, we're playing games. No phones, no phones at all. So that's it's actually makes a huge difference. And I think that's something that people should try. It's actually sometimes I catch myself like looking in my pocket for my phone. And it's like, oh no, wait, I left it in the kitchen. So yeah, and then automatically you just start paying attention to the people around you and giving them attention and instead of looking at Twitter or whatever it is.
Yeah,
and I think it's really good.
That's something that scares me a lot for like esports, because a lot of times you hear about like horror stories about like I hate these terms, but there's no really better terms, right? Like e-boys and e-girls, and like especially related to professional gamers. And that was one of the things that always like really scared me, because first of all, I am 27, even though I look 12. And so like when I saw people like this and like relationships and stuff is something I've worked with people on for a fair amount of time now in a professional setting. Like, how do you improve your relationship? How do you get better at this? And esports has always been something that scared me about like relationships, just because of the how fast people get into relationships and how they tend to treat them. And so that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up and kind of gauge your opinion on that. Is like, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a problem for people in esports? And there's the other aspect of whether or not people should be dating, which I think is nonsense. People should be allowed to date. You should just be in a healthy relationship. So, but like, I think that there is actually a legitimate concern there about like, are people getting into healthy relationships that they're actually working on?
That's the thing with esports, right? It's so much work and it's so much passion. Everyone that's in esports are doing it because they love it. I mean, most people. And I think you could draw the same parallel. I think, you know, someone working at Wall Street, you know, a businessman who like, or a businesswoman, whatever it is, that, you know, loves what she's doing or he is doing, might pay more attention to his career instead of, you know, the love life or whatever it is. And that's the thing with esports, you know, everyone is doing it because of passion. Everyone loves it. So I think it's a hard balancing act for sure. It's, you know, you have to find time for yourself. Is this something, you know, look 10 years in the future, will I be happy in 10 years if I keep doing what I'm doing? Or is there something I have to change? Is there something, do I have to pay more attention to, you know, whatever it is you want to do besides esports? And yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people are finding it hard to balance all of that stuff, because esports, the thing with, depending on what you do as well, I guess, but if you're a player, there's just so much time on a day, right? There's 24 hours. If you're on the top level, you're going to be playing a lot of video games, and you're going to be thinking about that video game all the time. So sometimes I found myself, you know, being kind of cold, I guess. You know, maybe not as open about things because I was just so focused on what I was doing. And I think, you know, if you're in a managerial role or whatever it is around it, you know, it's the same coin there as well. They want to do the best job as well, because esports, it's all about expanding it and getting better, and, you know, it's climbing that ladder. And esports is such a new field, and people are looking at it that way and want to, you know, I don't want to say exploit, but, you know, people are smart about it. And, you know, I think, as I answered before, I think it's up to the person. I mean, what I would do is, like, are you a family man, or do you want to have a relationship? That's those kind of questions is what you have to ask yourself, right? And, you know, if you answer yes, then maybe you should pay more attention to other things than what your career is.
One of the things that I always said is that, because you can't kill yourself, like realistically, like even like players, there's going to be some time off, but you need to make sure that you have very open, like your relationship needs to have some clear understandings of what you actually do and how much time you put into it.
Yeah,
because
sure.
Me and my girlfriend, when I was working with Gladiators, we've been dating 5 years now. I think it's going on 5. It's a long time for me. That's like fifth of my life.
That's
Holy
great.
shit, fifth of my life. But that was one of the things I was like, listen, if I'm doing this is my job for 6 days of the week. I will have one day that we can talk, and that I will give you this amount of time, and you need to be okay with that. And it was something that we had to come to an understanding to way beforehand. But I think that that's a huge part of it. But kind of like looking at your life growing up. So your parents.
Just to build on that, what you just said. When it comes to, like, I think that what you hit the nail on the head, so to speak. That having clear clear understanding between you and, in this case, your girlfriend, like, okay, I'm gonna be doing this here, and, you know, you have a set amount of time that you're dedicating to each other. From my experience, like, this was a New Year's resolution for me, and I've been working at it very hard, is that I've always been kind of bad at, you know, replying to people, my friends, when they write to me. I look at the message in my phone, I'm like, I'll answer it later, and then, you know, a week goes by, a message comes like, what happened, where are you, you know, and I'm like, oh shit. And it's like I was very bad at paying attention to my friends and my family, especially. And it's something, you know, that really took me back when I came home, and, you know, I realized how much, for example, my sister didn't know what I was doing in LA even. She knew I was there playing video games. She knew I was in Overwatch League. But I never told her about the struggles, the happiness, and all of that. And we had a really long conversation, about all the things that happened. And I just said to myself, I don't want to ever freeze out family or friends, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are gonna be there for you after, if stuff goes bad, or to celebrate your happiness or whatever it is. So that would be my primary advice to anyone, is that never neglect your family or friends for your passion. Like, you should always at least tell them, as you're saying, like, I'm gonna be busy here, but maybe we can talk in 2 days or whatever. And I think that is very, very important.
Yeah, that was actually something I did with Gladiators. There's a couple players who, they hadn't reached out to their family, and I was like, hey, listen, it sounds silly, but your day off, I want you to reach out to these people, because you need support systems, especially in Overwatch League with the way that the schedule is. You need people who you love and care about to support you. So I thought that was something that was really, really kind of important. So, like, kind of looking at your life and growing up. School, you mentioned that you have brothers and sisters, but what was school like for you? You mentioned that the stuff that you enjoyed doing came very easy, and you try, and the stuff you didn't. But like socially, you're a very social person, and so I imagine that school must have been something that you semi-enjoyed. You said you did sports and stuff like that. Were you a popular kid, CwoosH? Were you like the?
I would. Okay, so this is how I would put myself. I was in the nerd group, but at the same time, I was cool with the cool kids,
Okay.
So I was kind of, diplomatic in that way. I was, staying cool with the cool kids. I was staying true with my nerd boys. So, like, in my school, it was a good school. Everyone kind of, hang out. There was no bullying going on. Overall, it was really good, but I was more always true to my nerd boys. We were talking about, when Pokemon was big, we were playing Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And all of that stuff. But I've always kind of been a joker, I suppose, in school. But I can, when it comes to being serious, I can be very serious as well. But it was also, I'd say nerd boy at, the mostly I was towards the nerd boy side. But the cool kids were cool with me. So.
Okay, I mean, that's good. So your school sounds, honestly, when I hear about your school, I'm like, God, I wish I would have went to school there, because like my school sucked. What is Sweden like in itself? Like, obviously in the United States, especially like a political standpoint, the United States political system is very interesting, to say the least. But there's a lot of things that get compared to Sweden actually all the time, depending on your political state here. Like universal healthcare is one that gets compared to Sweden all the time. So what is it like in Sweden, being a resident of Sweden? Do you like Sweden? Do you like the politics of Sweden? What don't you like about Sweden?
I like Sweden because, the most obvious reason is I grew up here. I have all of my friends and family here. But when it comes to just living in Sweden as a person, I'd say it's a very good country to live in. It's very, it's the thing is, when I lived in America, I didn't get, I didn't live there. I didn't have to pay for anything and all of that, so I didn't get that experience. So I can't really compare. But living in Sweden has always been good to me. There's never been, in terms of the political standpoint and all of that, I'm not that into the political side. I'm honestly more into the political side of the states. I've always just been very interested in the states. And there's a little bit of turmoil right now in Sweden when it comes to the politics. We had an election about maybe half a year ago now. And it took us up to like just a month ago, pretty much, to get a government going, because the vote was so split and the parties couldn't agree with each other. So it's not all just golden or green grass and everything is just rose and good. So there's been some issues. A big issue in Sweden right now is the immigrant question. A lot of a political party has become really big because of this question, and there's a lot of it's starting to become a big divide in Sweden. But that's the main issue that is going on right now. But to me, it doesn't really affect me. It's on a big scale. I worked as a teacher for 1.5 years with immigrant kids, and I taught them Swedish and all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm more of the open person. What one could say, as a Swedish politician once said on a speech, was "open your hearts," and that's kind of me, I guess, in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. So going into that, you're going through school. Were you someone who liked to help people out? Because you mentioned you were a teacher. Like, where does that come from? The idea of wanting to teach, was that something that's always been with you? Like, where'd that come from?
My mom is a teacher, actually. And I don't know, maybe it rubbed off for me. Maybe it's the genes or whatever, the teacher genes. But no, I think I've always been. When people were asking in school, like how I bought this new phone, I can't figure out how it works, and I always wanted to learn about stuff, stuff that interests me a lot. I would, always dig into and really try to wrap my head around how does this thing work, where does it come from, all of that stuff. I think I've always been pretty good at explaining stuff. I think I can get better at it in English. I still can't find the words sometimes in English, but I've always been there to help people whenever they have questions, or when something is bad or something is good, whatever it is. I think I've always had the helping mindset, which then kind of translated into teaching mindset, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
When I've gotten older, is that I have to find the reasons and for helping, and there's a lot more going into it than just this is how you turn on your phone.
Yeah.
It's a growing process, and the thing I really really like about teaching is that it feels like, even though you're supposed to be there to teach the children, it feels like you're growing every single day. You're learning something new as a person, be it from the person you're trying to teach something, or you learn something new about yourself, like, oh, maybe I didn't explain that so good, or maybe I need to think on this differently. So that's what really kind of got me really liking teaching, is that I feel like I was growing every single day. I learned something new every single day. It kept my interest a lot, all the time. I never was bored of it. I was always looking forward going to work when I was working as a teacher. And I think it's not the same as coaching for sure, but it's kind of the same parallels in some ways. And yeah, that's kind of, I guess I kind of had it in me before I even became a teacher.
Okay, so
a little bit.
So kind of a brief question for you, looking at that. So you're growing up, and one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of pro players, not all of them, but a significant amount, is normally like there's a certain period of their time where games tend to take over a lot of their life, and they tend to drop out of other like social aspects. Is that something that happened to you? So like maybe they were playing sports before, they dropped their sports and started to put more time into video games. Was that something that happened to you? Because you mentioned that you played sports, but also you were social. At what point did that happen?
That is a good question. I used to play sports a lot growing up. Then I became more of a nerd, to be quite honest with you. World of Warcraft is a big factor in that regard. So I played a lot of World of Warcraft. It was when the Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. I played a lot of World of Warcraft. To be quite honest, but I quit my sports around when I was maybe 14, so it's quite early. But I was always kind of physically active. I used to go out walking because, as I mentioned, I grew up in outside of town, so there's a lot of nice paths in the nature you can take. We lived by a lake, so I would swim during the summers. I was still in shape for a very long time, but this is the main problem. What kind of happened, and I think, or not what kind of happened, but when Overwatch came, I never had the intention of going pro in Overwatch, but I was playing Counter-Strike Go, and then the Overwatch beta came out, and I just loved it so much, and I guess I'm going into how kind of the pro career started now, but around when the time I got reached out to by a player that said, I think you're pretty good at this game. Do you want to try for a team? That's when I I kind of just let everything go, which is the wrong mindset to have.
How old were you when that happened?
22, I think. Okay. Around 22, yeah.
Okay, so what happened? Because you mentioned that you quit sports at 14. What was the reason that you decided to quit sports?
Mostly because my friends quit. It's, my nerd friends. I'm still talking to them to this day. Yeah. They're my childhood friends. We still have a team speak, that everyone hangs out in when everyone wants to talk or play a game, whatever it is. So we've always stuck together, and we're a lot of people. We're like 9 or 10 people, and then it's expanded during the years. People from other towns in Sweden, and people like maybe someone I don't remember who. Like, I don't want to play sports anymore. I just want to play video games, and then months passed by, and more people quit, and eventually I quit, and yeah, I guess you could say I fell under the group pressure. Okay. But to be fair, I did enjoy playing video games more than I did enjoy playing sports.
That's fair. No, that's like I'm not shaming you for that at all. But it's just it's a very odd, like you were obviously involved in this other team aspect, and that I think that probably, to be honest, I think playing sports probably gave you a lot of outlook on team dynamics, especially playing till like 14. That was probably useful when you were in an Overwatch team, first of all, because like dealing with people. It's kind of a good thing to learn how to do. But you're also kind of a outlier for a lot of gamers in the fact that you're social. You seem to be very mentally aware of yourself and able to kind of look, and you're self-reflecting, which is another big thing. Like a lot of players or people in esports in general are not very self-reflecting. They're not willing to kind of look at themselves and work on themselves, especially for things that are harder to work on, such as mentality or behavioral patterns and stuff like that. And so like that shows like a huge difference from you to like a lot of other people, which also I imagine will make you a very, very good coach, in my opinion, from the little bit that I have heard so far. So, but it's kind of good to look at that. So you end up 14, like there's a huge time lapse between 14 and becoming a pro year. So what was filled between that 14 to 22, right? Like what included there? Was it mostly just business as usual? You were playing video games, going to school? Girlfriends, boyfriends?
I did have a few girlfriends. I had my first girlfriend, I think I had when I was around, it's quite late, like 15, 16 or something like that. And we were only together for like a year. It was my first girlfriend, and I spent a lot of time with her. But I also, played video games on the side still. She was also kind of into gaming, which was cool. But I was growing up. I wanted to try different stuff. I went to, the usual stuff as you do as a youngster. I went to some parties. I did a lot of growing up stuff, I guess. But mostly, it's, as you said, it was kind of business as usual. The thing that always drew me back was, the video games and hanging out with my friends in TeamSpeak or in real life, whatever it was. So the thing that always kind of called me home was, playing video games with my boys, pretty much.
That makes sense. Was there anything in that like time period that you would say was monumental to your life that helped you really grow as a person? Like one event during that time period that really helped you kind of understand how do you approach life? How do you go through? Was there anything like growing up, even maybe up to that 22 point where you were like, wow, this is an event that kind of really helped shape the way that I view life. I know for me, one of the things that shaped my life is actually my grandfather dying. Was pretty big for me because he had cancer, and because my parents were split, one weekend I went to my dad's, the next weekend I came back and he was dead, and like I didn't even get to say goodbye or anything. So it was something that really made me like kind of appreciate the people around me, and it's still something to this day that I like. It's a regret that I will probably never be able to get rid of. But like it was something very monumental to me. Was there anything like monumental to you that really helped shape the way that you kind of look at life?
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I said that I had red voice connected. Either case, yeah. I think that happened more recently to me, actually. I didn't have anything between, I'd say, 16 to 19, really.
Yeah.
I mentioned before about, my wow to whoa. Either case, my New Year's resolution to reach out to my friends and or family and be more there for them and talk with them, that actually happened because a childhood friend of mine passed away while I was in the States. while I was in LA, and I got a message, he's passed away, and that kind of hit me very hard. And I just remembered I hadn't talked with him for a very, very long time. So that really took me back. Is that he would message me and say, like, I hope you're all okay in the States and all of that, and I would say, yeah, I'm good, but I wouldn't, he wanted to call me, and I pushed it off, and that's really what kind of changed my way of thinking of friends and family, that not everyone is here forever, and you gotta take care of them, and you gotta make sure that you try your best to always be there for them, and if you cannot be there for them, you at least let them know that I'm busy. And so that's probably, it's very recent. It's like it's 1.5 years ago, or 1 year ago actually. In 3 days, it's 1 year ago it happened.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So yeah, it's that's probably the thing that has changed me the most during my upbringing. Even though I was an adult at this time, but that's definitely the thing.
I mean, we can still change. Actually, I think being able to change as an adult is probably something that is more impressive than like someone who's willing to still change. I think it's something that is very, very impressive, and I'm very sorry about the loss of your friend, because that is terrible. But, like, looking at that time frame, then that would have been what, stage 2 or 3 of Overwatch League. Yeah. That would have been incredibly hard, especially with everything that was going on. So I'm really sorry, and we're. Maybe when we get into like the obviously your competitive career, we can kind of like look over some of that stuff and what it was like. Looking at leaving high school, did you end up going to university or anything before you started teaching?
No, I actually never did. I was, as I said, I was studying up my grades. I was studying more advanced math, and I was studying also some social studies. But then I never went to the university, because I had done my application to like 5 different universities.
Yeah.
I got into 2 of them, but then the whole thing with Overwatch started. So, I said no. And I wanted to try and see where this Overwatch thing could lead me, because I knew I could always go back to what I was doing. But no, so I never committed to the university. But what ended up happening is, when I was wait, now I'm getting the times kind of mixed up here. So what I was studying, as I said, up my grades, and then I got the opportunity, because we in Sweden, as I mentioned, with the immigration, we got a lot of immigrants between 2010 and 2015 or 2016 maybe. So there was not enough teachers in Sweden to help all these kids that were coming in. So a school, or a local school here, they put out an ad that we're looking for someone who can teach Swedish to immigrant kids and help them out and just be there for them, kind of. And I was like, yeah, I've always been interested in teaching. I always wanted to maybe I wanted to try and see if that's something maybe I could study at university if I found it fun and interesting. And I went to the teaching thing, and I was there for 1.5 years, and I loved every single second of it. I got to teach them, basic Swedish, how to kind of, buy groceries at a store, whatever it is. And yeah, I loved every single moment of it. But then, I probably still do, is that one day I probably want to become a licensed teacher. The thing, what happened is, I was still at the tail end of my teaching career, I suppose. I got more and more into this Overwatch thing. So what ended up happening is that it's something I still kind of feel bad about, is that the last month I was there, I had about 4 hours of sleep each night, because I was screaming to like 12 a.m., 1 a.m., had to wake up at 5 a.m., go to work. So there was a lot of balls in the air then. And I didn't do a good job at teaching then, and I didn't do a good job at Overwatch, because I was just doing it too much. I had no sleep, and I had no focus on anything. If I was playing the Overwatch, I was thinking about, okay, what do I do for tomorrow? thinking about the teaching stuff. And when I was at school doing the teaching stuff, I was thinking about last night's scrims, like, oh fuck, I need to do this better. Oh, I'm sorry for cursing, by the way.
No, you can swear as much as you want on the show.
All right, that's great. But yeah, so I was never really focused on anything. So after a month, I decided I'm gonna try this Overwatch thing, and I quit my teaching job, and I went full 100% into. So yeah, I didn't just quit without having financial security, because I lived in my own apartment, the one I'm living in right now. So I quit when Mouse Sports actually wanted to sign us.
Yeah.
And gave us a offer, and it wasn't a lot of money, but I could live off it. So I decided, okay, let's give Overwatch a try. Let's see where this takes me, pretty much.
Okay, so let's kind of look into that. We've kind of covered a lot of your early life into like your Overwatch career. Let's hit on some of your Overwatch career, right? Mouse Esports, right? Very first team that paid you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mouse Esports, first team paid you. That is a very early contract for Overwatch League. Obviously, there were other esports going on, because I believe that was in 2016. So League of Legends was going on. It had been getting out there. I don't remember if franchising had been started or not yet, to be honest.
Counter-Strike Go was getting huge as well.
CS:GO. So what was the early Overwatch League contracts like?
So actually, before Mouse Sports, I was with another team called Team Endpoint.
Yep.
They didn't pay me, but they actually were the one who they paid for flights to a LAN in England called Insomnia, and it was Insomnia 52, and they would pay our flights, no salary or anything like that. But that was the first team. We went to a LAN there in I-52, I think it was. We placed third. We were expected to win, but we kind of choked at LAN. It was our first LAN, didn't go very well. And I was playing DPS back then as well. But that was a good first experience for me. Then, as I got home, Mouse Sports approached us, and yeah, it was the first contract. It was very bare minimum, to say. As I said, I could pay my rent pretty much. That's it. But I've always saved money, so I had money to buy myself food and not starve to death at least. So yeah, it was bare minimum, but it was first time you could say you were signed to a big team, because Mouse Sports, they're a legendary team in at least Counter-Strike. They were best 1.6. They were really, really good. They were world champions, and in CS:GO they've done some cool things as well. So yeah, I was super excited to sign to Mouse Sports, that's for sure. And I was playing with Logix back then as well.
Yep.
Him and me have always kind of stuck together through the beginning of Overwatch, and yeah, we were super excited. We went to a DreamHack 2016, I think it was, and we were feeling good. We were screaming Misfits going into this event, and Misfits, they were the big dogs. They were like the best in Europe for sure, and we were actually doing very well against them in scrims. But it turned out, they were, after this tournament, they had pretty much given up, because their team was kind of falling apart from the inside, and they didn't really enjoy the meta they were playing, and so they were trying some weird comps and stuff. But we didn't really realize that. We were like, we're beating Misfits, we are so good, we're gonna win this event. But then we went to DreamHack, and we managed to get through the BYOC, so we qualified to the main tournament. And we go into this tournament, and there's this team called LDLC. And we would always beat them in scrims. Like, we were very good against them in scrims. But once again, we were a new team, so it's me and Logix. But I had played on LAN before, but none of them had played LAN before. So we were doing weird stuff you're not supposed to do, and we just threw our game plan out of the window, and we did random stuff, and so yeah, we got wrecked. We lost 3-0 the first match, and it was definitely a learning experience. It was very cool to be there representing Mouse Sports, having the jerseys.
Were you in a team house? Or no, you mentioned that they paid you enough to live at home, so that you weren't in team houses.
No team house.
Okay, so what is the dynamic? Because you were functionally, I mean, that's what a lot of contenders is too now. Is functionally people live in their own space. Some teams have houses, especially in NA. More teams, I think, have actual like team houses and stuff. Like I know Gladiators Legion does, and I think New York might also. I don't quote me on that, but I know there's a couple that do, but a lot of them don't. Especially in Europe, it sounds like a lot of them don't actually have team houses.
I think Angry Titans is Samsung and Angry Titans actually they have team houses.
Yeah. So, but besides that, is it similar to, is like your first stint playing with Minds of Esports kind of similar to contenders now? Is there like major differences? Obviously, there's coaching structure and stuff like that, probably. But what was the coaching structure like then?
We didn't have a coach for Minds of Esports. Mm-hmm. We were just 6 players. Really excited to play the game. There were no talks about a coach. No one even thought about getting a coach. I think when kind of coaching or having coaches became kind of the norm is when I think we saw, I don't remember who, up to Scream the team, and they had 2 spectators, and we were like, what are they doing here? They're like, they're our coaches. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I started writing in private with someone from that team, and they were like, I was kind of interested, like, what's the point of the coach? And he said to me that he's going to record the entire Scream so we can look at our mistakes and improve. I'm like, that makes sense. That's actually very, very good. So yeah, I think after that point, this was after we left Mouse Sports, because we got an offer from Movie Star Riders at that. Yeah, exactly. And they wanted us to have a coach, and we actually wanted a coach as well. So at that point, that's when we got our first coach. But we didn't have a coach in Mouse Sports or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. So you've been someone who's kind of been outspoken about, I would say, coaching, and kind of like throwing your hat around in that ring now. You can kind of look back at it. You're in Movie Star Riders. Did the players pick the coach, or did the staff pick the coach? And how much power did that coach actually have?
We picked the coach.
Okay, so he had. That is a very odd dynamic. So he wasn't even. Yeah. Okay. So.
Yeah. So it was actually, I was playing with Neptuno back then, and he's obviously in Philadelphia Fusion now. But he had his friend called Sense, who he was like, he can record scrims.
So they're not coaches, they're VOD recorders, functionally. Overpaid VOD recorders.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what we thought. Like, okay, he's going to record the POV and then we can look at it and we can talk about it. That's great. And if he turns out to be good at, strategy and whatever, we'll listen to him. But he had no experience. This coach had no experience of, playing. He was like Diamond or something. He had never played in a professional team, had no experience of teaching, coaching whatsoever. But yeah, so he got signed with us, and yeah, it is as you said. He pretty much had no power at all. It was us players, calling the shots, what we wanted to do. If we wanted to replace a player or talk about strategy, whatever it was, he would come with input, which we obviously listened to, but most of the times we kind of felt like we should go with our ideas. We're players, we're better. But looking back at it, I think the way Sense coached us, he was an educated psychiatrist, I think. So he was.
We're gonna be careful about that title before we throw it out there, because that's something that I'm gonna tilt off the earth if he isn't, and so we're gonna say he was trained in some sort of mental health, but before we know his licensure requirements for it, because a psychiatrist in the States, you need to be a medical doctor. In the States, and that's I don't know the rules for Europe, but the same thing with a psychologist actually is anyone, before they can take the title of psychologist in the States, they also have to be a doctor and they have to be licensed in the state. And so most people who get, so like when I get called a psychologist, it tilts me because I'm like, no, I'm not a psychologist. I am a performance coach.
Let's say he was studying psychology.
There we go. See?
Yeah,
that's good.
But yeah, so his approach was kind of keeping us happy, trying to keep us happy.
Probably sure performance coaching.
Exactly. Making sure there were no conflicts. And he had a very interesting style. I remember before we went into games, official games, he would, we lived in a team house in Movistar in Madrid in Spain.
Yeah.
and I'll get more into that, but that was actually amazing. But in either case, so he would actually, before the games, he would find these. You remember when you were young and you were like in gym class, maybe you were 12, and then the gym teacher would tell you, lie down on your back, and then would turn off the lights and would replace like some meditating music.
Yeah,
that's exactly what he did before our games, and it actually kind of worked. We were calm, we weren't stressed going into the games. It was actually pretty good.
I did that with Gladiators actually, as I did some like meditative breathing before games, because there's this misconception. A lot of people think that, you just need to be really excited. Actually, being excited most of the time for video games is a very bad thing, because you get too excited, you have too much adrenaline, therefore you lose a lot of like sensory motor stuff, so like very fine detailed movements, which if you are playing any sort of shooter, you need to be able to move like millimeters, not inches. So like you really do want to kind of be calm and understand what you're capable of doing. So I would do something very similar with Gladiators actually because of that. So I imagine that could be very beneficial then.
Yeah, I think it was. It definitely was. It was really good. But yeah, so coaching was, back then it was, the coach didn't have power. The coach was player chosen pretty much, and I'm pretty sure it was that way for most teams. There were no established coaches at the time. There was nothing. It was, the brand new scene pretty much.
Yeah. So, Movie Star Riders, what was that like? Because Harry Hook was on that team too, wasn't he?
No, it was Neptuno. Harry Hook was on NVS.
I swear to God, I think maybe at one point he might have been on that team.
No, he never was.
Are you sure? Okay.
I don't know.
Because I had him on my show, and I would have to double check just because I don't remember offhand. But because I could be wrong, but I felt like at one point he might have been, because it was in Madrid, right?
It was in Madrid, yeah.
Okay,
he was not on the team when I was there.
No, I agree with that. That he probably wasn't there when you were there, because I don't remember your name coming up when we were talking about it. So, what was Movie Star Riders like for you, like that contract? Because obviously this is a fair amount of time later. It's I think 6 months later. Was the contract significantly different than your first one?
It was definitely. It was, first off, the contract going into it, when we had the talk with the general manager of Movistar Riders, he gave us the lowdown. He gave us, everything, his future plans a year from now, and what they wanted to do and what they ended up doing is they wanted to have the team house in Madrid, in Spain. We would have our own apartments. We would have a scrim apartment.
Oh, nice.
But then on top of that, they actually built a big practice facility, like a huge arena. And this arena, Movistar, they had League of Legends teams, they had Counter-Strike teams. Yep. They were dabbled in all the big games pretty much. Yep. But yeah, so we went down there into Madrid and we played from our apartments and in the scrim apartment for about maybe 2-3 months before this big arena that they built had opened. And I'm pretty sure there's some pictures long back on my Twitter or something, but it was really, really cool. They were, they had the glass rooms, practice rooms per game. They had, big TVs, a whiteboard. It was very, very professional. And on top of that, they had a big arena. Maybe it housed like 100 people to spectate.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And that is big screen, and so locals could come in and spectate League of Legends, or whoever from Movistar Riders had an official game. They wanted to put that team on the stage, so locals could come in and watch and stuff. They had a restaurant. They had a masseuse. They had they had a lot of things. So it was it was better then than it's some contenders team.
That sounds better than some Overwatch teams. I won't lie. Yeah. Like when I hear about even like Gladiators, we obviously had we both had the Blizzard arena where we'd go to practice, but that was all right. This sounds like it reminds me of the Team Liquid, when Team Liquid created their own kind of like facility. That's what it sounds like, it's like my dream of what I want to see all esports teams get to is having something like that.
We had, I forgot to mention, we had our own locker rooms and all of that. It was super, super cool. And, it was better paid than mouse sports, and we didn't have to pay for food. We didn't have to pay for living, anything like that. So it was quite the amazing contract to have at that time, especially in Europe as well. but then the Overwatch League was getting closer.
And they didn't get in.
No, they didn't get in. They wanted to get in.
Yeah.
That's what they told. They were trying to get in. They were in talks. I think even a Blizzard representative had been down and taken a look at Arena and all of that. But it never went through, unfortunately. So when Overwatch League was getting closer, the great culling happened in in both America and Europe. A lot of teams were dropping their players, and that happened to us as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, but what is kind of cool is you go from Movie Star Riders to Misfits, a team that you had previously played against. And what was it like transitioning into Misfits, getting into Misfits?
Yeah. So during Movie Star Riders, I had really good contact with, I was friends with Twick and Sebosai. Yeah. We were already talking on Discord a lot. Also Reinforce. So yeah, we were always good friends. We would play other games outside of Overwatch together, even, and we would always talk with each other. But then, things happened. They wanted to try a new main tank.
Yep.
I was playing DPS in Movie Star Riders, and they asked me if you think I would want to try as a main tank, because we like the way you call, we like the way you communicate.
Yeah.
And I think, since you've been playing Genji, as a Winston, what you as a Genji player expect from your Winston, what you need from him, and where you want him to position, etc. So, I gave it a try. It was Misfits, the best team in Europe. And, friends, idols I was looking up to, friends of mine. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's give it a try. And this happened after... and we had left Movie Star Riders when I actually trialed for them, obviously. But it actually happened also after the World Cup I was in, or Sydney stage, when we were in Sydney and playing. I still played DPS then, but then things happen between between the boys in Misfits. The reason why they let Reinforce go, something I don't really have to get into, but they reached out to me and said, we want you to try as main tank. And as I said, I went into it. I made a Smurf account, and I just grinded ladder. Ladder it used to be okay practice. Nowadays it's not so much. But I just grinded main tank a lot for like 2 weeks straight, 10 hours a day. And then I went into the trial. I felt pretty confident. The one thing I didn't realize at the time is that I worked on my mechanics in ladder, and I felt like I was in a good mechanical place, but the thing was communication as well. And they, the reason why they said they wanted to trial me is because of my communication, but it's different from going to a DPS to a tank, because they wanted me to take more charge, lead the way, and all of that stuff. And I eventually got to that place, but in the beginning they were like, you're kind of quiet. Why are you not talking as much? And I was focusing a lot on in a trial not messing up, focusing on my own play when it should be about the team play. So they kind of just talked to me about it, and then I was like, okay, I'll try to focus more on that part, and I'll do better. And I did better. I improved. I took what they said to heart, and I really, really worked hard on that. And eventually I got to a place where I felt like I was playing really good, and they thought so too, and they wanted to play with me. So that's pretty much how I got into Misfits in a short sense.
Okay, so you're on Misfits for a while before, and it obviously rebranded into Florida Mayhem, which is where you ended up getting onto Florida Mayhem. And Mineral, to my knowledge, was there the entire time, right?
Yeah, he was. He exactly. He came into coaching as soon as I joined as well. I think at around the same time.
Okay, so you were working. What was the coaching structure like then? Because in Misfits, I imagine it was at least somewhat different between Misfits and Florida Mayhem, because in Florida Mayhem you were all in a team house, right? You were all local. Were you in a team house with Misfits?
No, we were not actually. We were playing from home. First time we met was actually when we went to the Contenders finals together. So we were playing from home, but. Yeah, Mineral he's a really, really good coach, I think. He's very, very smart. He's very good at realizing what's wrong with the team and the overall strategy. He's a really, really good coach, someone I really respect. But he yeah, the thing was, also back then it was kind of, he had played for Misfits, for a while. Sebosai was playing, I think, flex support, and Mineral was playing Lucio when they were in after Korea, I think. So they had played with each other for like half a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of friends, and then Mineral came in as the coach when Sebosai went to the main support role, and they got Suppe for flex support as well. So they got me and Suppe into Misfits. So Mineral wanted to coach us, and
So
yeah.
brief question before we like jump forward, just because it kind of came up in my head. Do you think that you can coach? Obviously you're a player who's turned coach. Do you think you can be a player turned coach on the same team with people you used to play with?
No, I don't think so. I think it's doable. I think you can coach, but you cannot. You don't have full power as a coach. Then I'm not saying every single team needs a coach that has the full power, but I think in Overwatch League and today's standards, if a coaching staff works well together and has the right structure and everyone is following it, then it can be really, really good. That depends on the coach if the structure is good. But if it comes to a friend or player turned coach for the same team, I think you have a very limited impact on the players. I think you can't really get your ideas through. I think you can't really do what you want. They're still your friends. They will treat you like your friends still.
Yeah.
So I think Miller was put in a very difficult position. I think that as you said in the beginning, the question is, do you think you can coach a team you're friends with? And I still stand by that. I don't think you can. I think it will be bad in the long run.
Because that was something that I always thought was really important, is maintaining certain, especially for my job, because my job is to like work on player mentality. I can't be your friend and work on your mentality. Like, it sounds silly, but I need to be more than a friend. And what I've always told people is, listen, I'm going to be the person that you can call me a fucking asshole and say I'm a piece of shit, and I will still work with you the next day. Okay. And I will still work with you on those problems, but you can only do that because I'm not your friend and I'm someone that is a professional with. Because my friend, I wouldn't, like, there's a degree of which I'm not going to find that acceptable. Okay. Yeah. So like professional boundaries are, and that's something in esports I don't think enough people do. I think that is a problem. I think that there do needs to be stronger professional boundaries that you see in other job fields, but I think that is kind of lacking inside of esports. And I think that it causes a lot of problems, especially like when you mentioned that was the first thought. I was like, wow, that would cause a ton of issues if you did not have some things in place to try to correct that.
Yeah, for sure. As you said, I think a coach has to be professional. He has to not be buddy with the players. Obviously, you can have a mutual respect for each other and talk about stuff. But when you've been friends before and you go into a coaching position, it turns into it can turn into where the coach can get manipulated very easily. It feels like he won't be happy, the players won't be happy, the players will want a coach, but the coach thinks that they need a friend. It can be mix-ups in that way, and it leads to very bad situations where no one really respects each other's opinion. After a while, that's kind of what ended up happening, is that I feel like Mineral had really, really good ideas, and some players didn't agree, and he would kind of just fall over, like, okay, let's do it your way. But I feel like when it comes to coaching, you have to be seen as a leader figure. You have to be seen as a someone you can talk to, but someone that when it comes to the overall strategy or whatever your position as a coach is that you take all the information from the players, and then you have to make a decision as a coach, and your decision is what goes. And that's the way it has to work. Otherwise, you'll just end up in a loop, and people will think about different ideas and won't respect each other's ideas. And you have to definitely be in a position where you can do what you want to do as a coach and have the best tools possible to be able to reach what you want to do as a coach. And it'll never work out with a friend turned coach, I think.
Okay, because that was something like obviously with Dallas. Dallas did a very similar thing where they brought in Coco as a coach, and he recently left. And it was always something I was like, I don't think that this works, and I really don't think that it is. So Misfits and Mayhem are functionally the same entity for their lifespan, and I kind of want to look at them as like that just for the ease. So you were obviously on that team the entire time, and we talked about like the breakdown that can kind of occur. You were kind of like almost on the outside looking in, because obviously you weren't like really good friends with Mineral before he turned coach. You didn't play with Mineral. You were brought in at the same time. When did that breakdown start to happen between like the coaching structure and the players?
Yeah, when it broke down, that's a very good question. I think it's very hard for me to pinpoint. There was a lot of things I think that led to Mineral, ending up getting burnt out, taking this break he did. He went, away for an entire stage and came back for the last stage. Or actually, no, he didn't come back for the last stage. He came back. No, he came back when the season was over.
Yeah.
But we obviously signed, 2 new players. We signed Ryder as a coach. It's hard for me I can speculate, but it's hard for me to say what really brought Mineral to that point. I think obviously I feel like his ideas and the things he wanted to do for the team never really got heard and really, respected. I'm not saying we just all, just neglected everything he said and never, listened to him. We definitely did. But at the same time, I felt like he probably felt pressure that, he's been friends with these guys, and, if he doesn't listen to them, maybe, the relationship will break down, or I'm not really sure. But what ended up happening is, I think, what I see from now when my time in Mayhem is over, is that when Mineral came back, I think he really had a long think on, what he wants to do as a coach, and how he should be as a coach. And he came back with a totally different mindset, and he was put in this position by, he decided to go and coach his friends, but at the same time he was offered by Misfits, by his friends in Misfits, that you can coach for us. So he was put in that position, but when he came back, as I said, he had a different way of doing things, and I think that break for him really was when he took a long think of, this is not going to work. I cannot be like this. If I want to do what I won't be happy. The players won't be happy. So he kind of, he came back kind of cold. He wasn't, hanging out with his friends in the team that he usually was. And he really took time to think of what he wanted to do. And I think, looking back at it, it's the decision he had to do, or what he had to do. But from the get-go, he was not put in a position where he could succeed even. So I think it was kind of a fundamental issue in the entire team from the get-go. And it kind of came to a point where things didn't work out anymore. Obviously, we were losing a lot of games. He was trying his best to talk about, strategies, what they had to change, and sometimes that went well, and sometimes, people didn't listen or respect, or, whatever it was. So it kind of broke down from that point. But, as I said, Mineral, I think, is a very, very smart coach and very, very good coach. And I think if he was put on any other team where he wasn't friends with anyone, or, he was just there as a coach, a professional figure as it should be, I think he would have done amazing work. So
so that kind of brings me to a question about Mayhem before we get into like your history with Mayhem, because like Mayhem obviously this season has not done that much better. Like they made some fairly drastic cuts. Like obviously they cut the entire, like there's no more Westerners on that team. They've cut all of them. They're still not doing really that much better. They brought in a bunch of people like Koreans that people question whether or not they would be good or not. A lot of people were like, you're not shelling out for like top dollar Koreans here. You're not trying to pick up the best of the best. You're trying to like almost like restricted on a budget, but you still want to do this. And you might be better off doing other things. So that kind of brings me to the question of like Mayhem, both today and from the past, but you can really only speak on the past. How much of it, like, it seems like the fault isn't really the player, like maybe somewhat the players, right? To a degree, because obviously if you're not listening to your coach, but some of that is set up by, and Mineral was another person that people tended to blame, like, oh, it's Mineral. You obviously had a lack of staff, but what all these things tend to point to for me is like the upper management of like the Misfits organization / Mayhem organization and the resources that they're actually providing. And I want to know from you is, do you think that that is where the problem lies for Mayhem? Because another thing is, it seems that the Misfits League of Legends team is willing to shell out a lot more money than the Mayhem team. Like looking from the outside, that's just kind of the way that it looks. Like they're picking up the previous pro League of Legends talents, and they are in Korea, and they are not doing the same thing for Mayhem. So like, is it a money problem? Is it a management problem? Is it a coaching problem? Is it a player problem? Where do you think the problem actually lies? Like if you were to go in and say, this is the way that you fix Mayhem, this is the part you need to cut off, right? And start over from this point on, where would you do? What would you do?
That's a good question. I think it is, as you accurately point out, is that they are definitely willing to spend more money on the League of Legends team. They're way more invested in that, I would say. Mm-hmm. I think the way they approached Season 1, going into Season 1 was, obviously bare minimum, 6 players, 1 coach. We were doing good in contenders. We didn't end up winning. We came second, but we were undefeated in the regular season. So we were good in contenders, but all of us moving there, we went into this big house. We were, depending on the traffic and on the day, it would take between maybe 40 minutes to 1.5 hours to get to the arena where our practice facility was. And that would be, between 2 to 3 hours of commuting every single day. Sitting in the same car, in the bus, where, if we had a bad day of practice, people would just sit, and kind of simmer that anger. People didn't want to really be next to each other sometimes, So there were no really private space for us players. The house was great, it was big, we all had our own rooms and all of that. But from the get-go, I felt like going into it, they were doing the bare minimum. We had a general manager who, to be quite frank, didn't really do that good of a job. He would forget things, he would do things wrong. Miller was alone as well. He had no one to ball ideas off. He had no other coach to talk to. He was, he had no support staff to help him. And same with the players. We had nothing as well except Mineral, who was our friend. So from the get-go, it was, it wasn't good. And they tried to make, I think, band-aid fixes going into, the halfway of the season, where they signed Saya player, who's obviously a god at Widowmaker and McCree, and they signed another main tank, an awesome guy, and they also signed Ryder, another coach. But at the same time, during this period, the general manager was moved to Berlin, and we got a new general manager who is still managing today, and his name is Matt, and I think Matt is really, really good. I think he has really good ideas, and he's actually listening, and he really loves this team, and he really believes in it. So I think Matt was probably the best change Mayhem did. But integrating the players, integrating the coaches to work with each other, I think that wasn't done very well.
You guys didn't have a translator for a while, did you?
No, we didn't. We had I think after 3 weeks or something, we got a translator.
To put it in perspective, that is almost functionally an entire stage. An entire stage last season was 5 weeks. Pretty
much. And we would, when Ryder wanted to explain something, he would have to go to Google Translate or Papago. And it would just take a lot of time. And, sometimes, that sentence wouldn't even make sense. We wouldn't understand anyway. So it wasn't integrated well at all. And it wasn't, really decided on how the bench player should approach things. Like, I felt like they didn't really care about the bench players.
Yeah.
They didn't, let them know, okay, we need you to really work on this, and I want you to focus on this when you're not playing. And when you're spectating scrims, I really want you to look at these things, and I want you to take notes about this, whatever, It felt like I, as a person, was kind of left, in the dust in a way. I felt like also what ended up making me feel this way is because obviously Mineral left, and that was like 2 weeks after we got Ryder, or 3 weeks. I can't really remember at this point, but Mineral did his best. He obviously had a lot to deal with, but after I left, I felt like just the air of the team, the atmosphere, everything just went out the window, and things just went from bad to worse even.
So looking at you on that, I want to ask you a question because we talked about it earlier. The time that Mineral left must have been very close to the same time that your friend passed away.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much.
What
very close together.
What were you going through? Because nothing is going right in your life at this time.
No.
Quite literally, when it rains, it fucking pours for you. You hear your friend passing away. You have Ryder coming in, who you've stated didn't do anything really. You have Mineral leaving. What did that feel like? What were you going through? What were you thinking about during that? And you're not doing great in Overwatch League either. It's quite literally everything.
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was very, very hard. It was probably one of the toughest periods of my life, to be quite honest. Mina leaving, the team is doing bad, everyone is unhappy. People are reading Reddit. It's just a spiral of darkness that everyone is just falling down. And Mina leaving, it was really bad, and then my friend dying, and Ryder being alone, and we finally got a translator. I think around the time when Ryder got interim head coach. But he didn't do a good job, as I've stated on Twitter. He didn't really care. He wanted to, the thing what ended up happening that really gets to me is when we would be in the practice rooms and scrimming, whatever. During the breaks, between blocks, there was, usually an hour break or something. He would always go away with Saya Player and Awesome Guy and talk with those guys. He would never really pay attention to us Westerners. He would never talk, even though I came up have a question. He would give a very short, brief answer, then just turn his heels and walk the other way. And then also, I wanted to try. I wanted to get back on stage. I wanted to play. I felt like. My confidence was still, it was definitely hurt. It got worse during, this period. But I remember very vividly that they showed comparison between me and Awesome Guy on stats, and I had better stats in pretty much every category. And stats that doesn't say much, but it proved a point to me, and I was, I'm good enough, or I can play on stage, and I approached Ryder and asked what do I need to do? What do I need to do what do I have to focus on to get a chance to play again? And he would just say, watch VODs, not watch a VOD of a player. You need to focus on your jumps, you need to focus on your bubble. Nothing like that. It was just you need to watch VODs.
So no direction at all.
No direction at all. Just very general things. And from that point, I obviously tried to watch VODs. I took notes, and he said, I remember this very vividly as well, is that Sappis didn't get to play much either. So me and him would hang out a bit, and he Ryder one time, I don't remember when, he took us away and wanted to talk to us, and he said, I'm gonna make a manual, as he called them, for you guys, and I want you guys to get a chance to play on the stage again and all of that. This was pretty early on when he was interim head coach. That never happened. He never did any one-on-one coaching, nothing like that. So that never happened. So we never got a really chance to get back into the main team. What would end up happening is how we would get our chance to get back into the main team would be we got one map or two maps in a block. No preparation. Nothing like that. Just going in like all cold. Here, play this map. Let's see what you can do. That was pretty much it. And I hadn't played. I sat and watched scrims. I played some competitive, like on the ladder, and I go in entirely cold. I play one map, and he said I would play 2 maps. And then after 1 map already, he just removes me. He's like, "No, this is not going to work." And I never got, like any connection. Like what did I do wrong? What do I have to do better? It was just watch VODs. That's it, pretty much. And from that point, it was during this period, as I say, it was very, very tough for me. It was very hard, but I got through it. I learned a lot from it. A lot about myself, and not. I feel like I came out a better person in the end, but
yeah, I mean,
it was very,
like
very rough.
The fire can make us stronger, right? Like you go through it, as long as if you don't break, then you come out as like a crucible. You're much stronger in the end. But one of the questions I want to ask you is, you're going through all this stuff going on at the time, and when Mineral leaves, did you feel like he abandoned you? Like, I mean, at the time, I know probably looking back now, you're like, you know what, I don't blame him. But I can't imagine, like, if I was in that spot, I don't think I could not have some sort of resentment at the time. Like, wow, you're just abandoning us. Like,
at the time, yes, definitely. I felt that way. I feel like most players in the team did. We felt like he just kind of left, and without pretty much saying goodbye or giving a reason for it. He said he was burned out. I mean, to be fair, he ended up, he broke down in front of us, started crying, and but at the same time, we felt like, okay, what's going to happen now? 1 week goes by without Mineral. We're having Riders, a head coach. Things are not, things are way different. We're not even looking at VODs anymore. Like feels like we're a different team. I was annoyed that Mineral left. Everyone was pretty much annoyed that Mineral left, for sure. But as you said, I understand in hindsight why it happened, and I completely understand why. And the position he was in was not the easiest position to be in. That's for sure.
Or arguably fair. Like the position he was put in was arguably not fair, which is kind of why, like, it's like one of the things with Mayhem that is like always something that I'm like, how did this happen? Because it should have never like happened, and why is it seems like it's still happening. Like, I won't lie, looking from the outside in, it does not seem like things have gotten significantly better, especially when they started out with a half Western, or like 3 Westerners and the rest Korean roster. Like, you see that and you're like, there's no way that this is going to work. Who thought that this was a good idea? Because that person like arguably shouldn't. And obviously they cut it. Like, they cut off everything. So they're like, oh, this isn't working, we're getting rid of it. But like, looking at the outside, everyone's like, this isn't gonna work.
I mean, if you're gonna do it right, you have to get the correct pieces for it. You have to have a translator day one. You have to have all of these things prepared. Which wasn't prepared.
Yeah, so that kind of like, first of all, the cojones you have for being able to come out and just basically call someone out, I appreciate that a ton. I think that it's something that is kind of important. But like, you obviously there's one more question I kind of want to ask you about this season. One of the things you had stated while during the season is your goal was to win the Overwatch League, or to kind of be shown that you are a main tank that is competitive at this level. I'm making an assumption here, but I don't think you met either one of those goals. Like, what was that like for you to watch? Because this is something that we don't talk about a lot. We always have, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try harder, I'm going to do better. And it's kind of what people fall on. But like, you kind of look at and you watch your goals in front of you quite literally crumble, and they're not being made. What was that like for you, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I felt like there was one period in Mayhem where we actually did well for a while. We beat Valiant. I think we almost beat Outlaws. There was one other team we beat.
You've taken us to
San
Game
Francisco
5s.
Shock. Yeah, Shock as well when Sinatra had his debut. So there was a period, and that was when Mayhem and Mineral and Ryder just started working together. And I was still playing. I felt like we were on the up and up. But then, Sire player and awesome guy comes in, and we start to shake things up. Internally things aren't going well. Mineral ends up leaving. So I have no power in my hands anymore. I'm doing what I can from an individual level. trying to talk with Ryder what I can do to improve, what I need to do to get get a chance to get back into on stage. So for me, as I said, people were reading. I stayed away from Reddit. I was actually pretty good at that. Yeah, I read it like maybe first few weeks in Overwatch League, but then it doesn't matter if there's positive messages. If there's one bad message, you just feel shit for the entire day. So I stayed away from Reddit. But some people in the team, they read Reddit after every single game, and I just felt how people just lost confidence all around me, and it was not a good situation.
No.
And I kind of if people are losing confidence, people are sad, people are losing motivation, all of that kind of spreads. I didn't, I kind of fell under the influence, I guess, that I lost my confidence as well. I was on the bench. I started to doubt myself, like, I'm not good enough. Like, why am I even here? And all of that stuff, all of those thoughts went through my head. So it was very, very, very hard. But after, as I said, I felt like I become stronger as a person after this. Is that I don't really know how I went through it. I think, talking with, I was very close to Sebosai and, Twick as well. We talked a lot, and it was not always, doom and gloom. I feel like if I had no friend on the team or anything like that, I literally would have no one to talk to. So yeah, that definitely kept my head above water, I think. And when the season, we knew pretty early on that we were gonna get cut. And when the season was over, I didn't even feel sad. That's the weird part. Like, I felt like, my time in Mayhem in the beginning was good, but then the rest of it was literally miserable. Not all of it was, but I felt like relieved almost. Which is, as I said, it's a very weird thing to say, but then I went home to my family, and I spent a lot of time with my family, like a week or two. Just didn't even think about Overwatch, didn't think about anything, and I talked with my family a lot about all of these things, and I think it kind of weaves back into the whole family thing. Like, it's important to have someone to talk to, and important to have someone that listens to you, and so you don't end up in your own head, and then that's not good ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely hard. I don't have the answer on how I got through it. I guess I kind of soldiered on, and I got through it.
That's kind of a good way to look at things. Like, you just keep going until eventually it gets better, and it goes through. And reach out to people. Don't cut yourself off. That is like a huge thing I will say. Is do not cut yourself off from people.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of looking at that. You make the transition from a player to coach, and after you deliberated on this, you did tryouts. The tryouts didn't work out, but at that point, you were also, like, you had mentioned something that caught on, is that you just weren't enjoying playing the game anymore. What was it like to have something that quite literally is your life, and then just be like, I hate doing this? And you push through it for a long time, because that's what people do. And a lot of that kind of is like reminiscing on like old days, or like money is definitely somewhat of a factor. As much as people want to say it isn't, like having a stable paycheck coming in is very reassuring. But so, like, you probably tried to push through, but what was it like when you kind of came to the realization that I actually hate doing this as a job now? I don't want to play anymore. I don't enjoy, like, some of the work that comes with it. I like thinking about the game. I like the game. I just don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah. To me, it was, I think, when I got home, as I said, spent a week and two with my family. And I just remember, after a week, I started up Overwatch. I played a few games on ladder, and it's like, I felt like it was just a chore, I didn't enjoy it. It was just something I had to do. And I kind of, I was like, I'll keep playing. Maybe it disappears, and I played for a bit, but I didn't play much at all. I played maybe 2 hours to 3-4 hours a day. Some days I didn't even play. And I still did trials for some teams, contenders teams. But I wasn't prepared at all. I didn't have my heart in it. I didn't have the focus. I didn't go 110% at all. And that's the point where I just kind of felt like it was a chore. I didn't enjoy it anymore. I feel like probably a part of it is because of the time in Mayhem. But yeah, then I realized, after I did the trials, I didn't do a good job of the trials at all. I had just been unfair to myself. Like, what's the point if you're not even trying? Like, you gotta do something different. You have to change things up. So I did. Going in, as I said, I've been a teacher before. I really, really, really like teaching, and that's something I was thinking of. As we mentioned in the beginning, like CS:GO was getting big around the time Overwatch came out. League of Legends was huge, and there were coaches. And I've seen coaches. I've played under coaches. I've talked with coaches, and the job is entirely different. It's dealing with people, handling people. Obviously, it's a lot about the game as well, depending on what kind of coach you are. But from my view, what I'm doing right now, I'm obviously handling the team, the players, and doing the overall strategy. But that's something I found fun as well. I've always found strategy and thinking about possible outcomes, thinking about the game. I watched a lot of StarCraft. I played a lot of StarCraft. I really enjoyed doing wacky strategies and seeing if they work. So that's something I've always enjoyed. But also dealing with people, or not dealing is probably not the right word, but
working with people.
Working with people, exactly. And trying to find a way, or it's a team game. Building that synergy, making sure that people are on the same page, all of those things, which, to be fair, I have no experience of. Teacher and a coach, like, it's all about the team now, and a teacher, it's all about pretty much the individual. And I'm still learning to this day, that's for sure. There's a lot of things that are never clear when you're coaching. There's always things that it's very rare that you have a yes or no answer to any problem or anything in coaching. Okay, yeah, as I said, there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of wagering options back and forth, and it's an entirely different thing I've never worked with before, and I really, really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, it's definitely a learning process, and it's the same as teaching. I feel like I'm learning something new every single day, and I really, really, really enjoy, like, the thing I didn't think I would enjoy as much, which I've turned out that I think I enjoy the most, is the entire part of communication. Like, what's the easiest way to make sure that everyone understands, everyone's on the same page. And I've tried a lot of different things in the short coaching career I've had, and there's a lot of experimentation, a lot of iteration on things, and the hardest thing to really get right, I think, is communication. And that's something that I think that's something that I really enjoy, trying to, like, figure out what the best way is. Thinking of the personalities you have in the team, thinking of all of these factors, and trying to make the best system you can.
Do you think that you were influenced to be a coach because of all the bad coaches you had?
No. I mean, that's probably no.
Because I mean, like, you think about it, like, if you have bad coaches, you'd be like, wow, like, this is really bad. I think I can do a much better job, and I think that we need better coaches.
I think definitely with the whole rider situation, I think that was just a very big eye opener for me, and how frankly lazy someone can be, and not caring. Like, why are you coaching if you're not caring about the players or the team you're coaching? And maybe I was inspired, or a little bit, but I feel like, as I said, from a very early standpoint, I feel like teaching and coaching is something I've always been
Makes sense.
interested in. So yeah, I probably go with that. I think.
No, that makes sense. Like, I'm just kind of curious there.
Yeah.
Kind of looking at coaching out. You've made a fairly fast progression, I would say, into an academy team. You obviously you were working privately with a company. I cannot remember. I think it was Learn to Play or something like that.
Learn to Esport. Yeah.
Learn to Esport. I was very close. Learn to Esport. You worked with them, but then you jumped into Team Giganti, and then very quickly from Team Giganti you jump into Eternal Academy. And you work from it was a very, very quick, I would say, shift going through, especially during that time. What's it been like coaching, and what do you think is one of the biggest things that you've learned so far? Like compared to being a player?
Yeah. Well, first off, it's completely different. What I've really, what I've learned is during this short time, I suppose, is what I'm good at and what I'm bad at.
Okay.
And really try to fix or work on the things I'm bad at, but also really focus on the things I'm good at. So if for example, I feel like I'm good at one-on-one feedback, doing one-on-one coaching with a player. I feel like I'm good at that. I feel like that's where I excel. What I did struggle with in the beginning was actually the strategy part. But that's something, as I said, I played a lot of StarCraft. It takes time, you need to really put your mind to it and think about all the different factors. And at the end of the day, what you need to do is try stuff. And if it doesn't work, you have to figure out why it doesn't work. Was it, did the player not fully understand what the strategy was? Was it, a fundamental issue in the strategy? Was it the positioning? There's so many things you have to think about, which I've definitely learned that if a strategy doesn't work, it's not because of one reason. It's usually a lot of different reasons why it's not working, and to try and pinpoint the issue is not you can't just do that. You have to really take time and look at all the different parts that are moving, and also look at the map, the team you're playing, all of those things. That's something I feel like I've learned the most, is that when it comes to strategy and overall game plans, you have to be willing to take time with it, and you can't just brush it to the side that no, this is not going to work. Because if it's something you really think is going to work and is something you believe in, then even if it's not something you believe in, you have to really criticize and look through it like you would analyze anything in life. It's never cut and dry like that. So
that makes sense.
That's definitely the thing. So
are you happier now than you have been in the past?
Yes, for sure. I think a lot of it is I really the thing with Mayhem and all what happened has brought me closer to my family, my friends. It really gave me motivation to try other stuff, which I've done, and I think it's something that I've been wanting to try, and I've tried it, and I'm really happy with it, and I enjoy it a lot. And I think I just, it's the same as teaching. I'm learning something new every single day, and that's what I really like about anything, is that if I can feel like I'm growing in some way every single day, then I feel like I've achieved something. I feel like I'm regressing, if I feel like I'm not getting answers, I'm not doing if I feel I'm not progressing at all, which I did in Mayhem, then that's a feeling I never want to feel again, and it was not good at all. And I feel I'm very, very happy where I'm at right now.
Cool. So I have one last question for you, and if you've watched all of any of my episodes, it is the last question I ask every single guest. Arguably the hardest question, depending on who you are. So my last question for you, which is fairly simple, in my opinion, is if you could you've been on the show. It's kind of an experience. It's very different than almost anything else that is out there. I find it very fun. But that being said, having been on the show, if you could see anyone be on the show, the only requirement is they need to be able to speak speak English because I am uncultured and only speak one language. And they need to be involved in esports in some aspect. They do not have to be players or coaches. They can be casters. They can be behind the scenes, anything like that. Who would you have be on the show? Oh, they also don't have to be involved just with Overwatch. They can be other games too.
Okay. The first thing that comes to mind is actually Mineral. I would like to hear Mineral's side of the story and see, you know, what his thoughts are, because I feel like, you know, I speculated a bit, but you know, I would really like to hear from him. Also, another one would be I'm giving two people here.
That's fine.
Maybe I'm cheating a little bit, but I would say Reinforce as well.
Okay.
I think Reinforce is a very, very smart guy. He has a lot of knowledge about the game. He's a very down-to-earth guy that, you know, is very fun to talk to. So Reinforce or Mineral, I would say.
Okay, I think those are good answers. So that being said, do you have any shout-outs or anything? I don't normally give them, but if you want them, I'll let you have them.
Not really, no. Thank you for having me on the show. It was a pleasure talking to you. It was good to kind of clear the air a little bit and talk about this stuff. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I greatly enjoyed having you on the show, and I'm greatly for you taking the time out of your day to come be on here, because I have a lot of fun doing this, and you wanting to be on here just makes it a lot easier for me to kind of talk about things and feel very open, and our connection with that. With that being said, this has been Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and until next time, I hope everyone has a wonderful day.